Like our thoughts
Mm-hmm.
aren't always the truth, if that makes sense. So that thought for me, like I can't push it out because I can't stop my mind from thinking, and that's just what it does. But I can acknowledge that that's a thought, and I can also acknowledge the other thought of like, well, what if this is the time that I need to be able to show up and do things even better than I was doing before?
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. We are your host, Bryce III, he, him pronouns.
Liz McKean, she, her pronouns.
And Liz didn't even know that this was going to be an episode. We were recording the intro because we are taking a brief hiatus from the podcast, and I am going through allergy things, so I had to put my glasses on. She was like, well, I'm going to put my glasses on too. So if you're watching this on YouTube, we're just some cool cats in the studio, and I'm like, what a better time to record a solo episode than right now.
I mean,
Liz,
why not?
I
don't know what we're talking about, but I'm excited to be here.
Man, look, I feel like 90% of our phone conversations or any conversation that we have like could be recorded, and I think people should benefit from it. That might be a bit of ego talking, but
everybody wants to hear everything we have to say.
But how's your energy?
It's good. Man, I gotta tell you, recording anything with sunglasses on is a very different experience. It's so wild because we are in different states, we do this virtually, but like I know your expressions through your eyes, and so I can't. A few times I've been like, wait, what look is that you're giving me? I can't tell. So I'm just feeling like it's a whole new world.
Yeah. I mean, if you all are watching this on YouTube, you can see my lenses are red tinted, but my actual eyes are the literal colors of my lenses right now because allergy season is upon us. And so, it's just a little Detroit flair. I think glasses, so, eyes are the windows to the soul. I got some pretty cool glasses, but what I learned is that some days I'm just in an energy where I can wear the glasses and be okay in spaces and be myself. But other times, like I feel like I'm hiding when I have glasses on because it's like, I need you to see my eyes, or I'm conveying my vulnerability to the space in such a way that makes the space safe for me. And if I have glasses on, like, I just feel like I'm in costume.
Yeah. Sunglasses particularly.
But I don't need any glasses. So I got like costume glasses that look sweet, but even with those on, it's like, I feel like you think something about me that I'm not. I get into that whole little world, and it's like, let's just take the glasses off. Let's take the frames off, and let's just be real with each other. And so that pause from Liz goes to show that she has no idea what we're going to talk about today. But I think I just want to talk about like taking a second to breathe. I think I may have fought you on like taking a break from the podcast a lot. And even though you all won't know that we're taking a break, because beyond the special intro that we'll have at the beginning of the episodes, like things are going to run as they've always ran. You'll have an episode every week to be able to tune into, but we won't be recording actively, taking guests actively. We'll be more focused on digging into the why of why we're here, which I think as much as, I don't ever want to get like out of a groove because I'm afraid that I won't be able to get back into a groove. I think that rests allow for us to reestablish what that groove even is and why we landed on that groove in the first place.
Yeah. I feel like that's a big topic of conversation, just in general in the world, and also with us is rest and our not feeling like we have earned rest, or thinking that you need to earn rest, or, feeling like you said, like, if I rest, what if I give in to this innate laziness that I have and never come back? And like, that's all just crap, honestly. Like, total crap. Like, we are our best selves when we are rested, and rest doesn't even have to be just so that you can like be more productive. It can just be because you are a human being and your human body needs that to survive, and it's just one more beautiful part of who you are and who we are. And yeah, I'm excited to have this little bit of space to rest or to be active in things that we're excited about. And one of those things is going to be planning the next chapter of this pod, and it's all good. I'm pumped about everything that, we're going to create.
Yeah. I mean, I think like what's crazy though is like I've come to discover that like work is rest. Or wait, I said that backwards. Rest is work. This is why I need some rest. But it's work in the way that if not done intentionally, all I'll do while resting is beat myself up about the fact that I'm resting. I'm in a groove, and by resting, I'm getting out of that groove, and that's gonna disallow me to show back up in the groove when it's time. Like having that mindset, which is almost the automatic mindset for me. If I don't get intentional about entering into a mindset of like, okay, no, this is time to like push this. This is yes, not push it out my head, but yes, that's a thing, and no, there's no validity to that. Like our thoughts aren't always the truth, if that makes sense. So that thought for me, like I can't push it out because I can't stop my mind from thinking, and that's just what it does. But I can acknowledge that that's a thought, and I can also acknowledge the other thought of like, well, what if this is the time that I need to be able to show up and do things even better than I was doing before, and give more stock to those thoughts and that focus. And that's work. Like that's work. If I don't like journal, if I don't like look at it, if I don't intentionally have that conversation with myself, what automatically ends up happening is the whole time I've been off, like I've been beating myself for being off. So by the time I get back on, like I'm just as fatigued if I was fatigued when I left as when I left. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it definitely does. I get that a lot too. And, the other kind of side of that coin, if that's the wrong metaphor, but we're going with it, is there's times that like for me anyways, if I put off resting, if I like do not give myself a break, if I have just decided that I do not deserve a break and won't give myself that, there will be a time that my body and brain will do it for me. And the thing that sucks about that kind of rest is that it's more of what you're talking about. Like the amount of times I have found myself to the point of just like feeling really burned out and like there is nothing I can do right now but sit on this couch and stare at the phone or the TV or something, and I feel terrible. Like I'm not doing it. I'm not on purpose. And the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm like, I need to be doing these things, but I physically and mentally cannot because my body and brain have been like, we're done. And like that's a terrible feeling. And honestly, if you walked into my house and saw me sitting there, for sure you would be like, oh, good, you're taking some time to rest. Or, depending on whether you like me or not, maybe you'd be like, you lazy piece of garbage. But either way, I look like I'm resting, but really the chaos that's going on in my mind and my body are so intense that, no actual rest is being accomplished there. And the funny thing about it is the times that I have been like, I smell the smoke before the house burns down. I know I'm seeing the signs of like myself getting tired. So let me like rest before I absolutely have to. Those are the times that taking a longer than normal shower and like a great idea will pop in my head. Or, I decide to just journal for the joy of it instead of like putting something into my computer that is, an email I have to return. That's when all of a sudden like the ideas will just come, and the excitement about the work that I'm doing, the why, will show up in a way that, I was reaching for and searching for and trying to force. But if I just allowed it to come to me, it was there all along. It's wild. It's wild how we fight that with that like innate, like our body's telling us what we need.
I wonder how much of that is like cultural for like Western society. I was listening to this podcast about ADHD, and it was like ADHD is contextual, where it's like you're not attention deficit unless like there's something that requires your attention. Like that you have to be like on for. And so I in a situation where the only thing to do is to do nothing, like there's no attention deficit, because wherever my attention goes is wherever it's supposed to be, and that's okay. And so I know, like, professionally, and when you're a creator, or even in recovery, where we can feel like, all right, I spent this long trashing all of my relationships, and trashing all the environments that I've stepped in because I was only focused on one thing, and that was to feel better and to get what it is that I need to get. And so now I'm OT, like I'm working overtime. There's never enough time to do all of the things that we need to do, or that big bully of people in recovery, people of intentional living, or just people in general. The 2-word bully, supposed to. I'm supposed to be this way in this moment, because most often those 2 words, supposed to, are there to describe something other than what is. Like, this food ain't supposed to be cold, like but it is. So it's not supposed to rain today, but it is. And the supposed to is usually, for me, where the suffering lies, because I'm at odds with what is. When I'm at odds with what is, as a person who lives the lifestyle that I've chosen to live, like the work for me is to soothe that in between, that friction between what is and who I am and what I can allow for. And that's been, the glasses, Liz, they make you look like, when you think about it. So those who are not watching the podcast, when I said that, Liz made a face, but the glasses took it 10 times over the top. Like, whoa, did I drop a nugget, or was that confusing? I don't know. It's mysterious.
It was my thinking face. It looks a lot more apparently like I'm thinking when I have glasses on.
You are a sunglasses commercial today, Liz.
That's amazing. Sorry, didn't mean to distract you with my contemplation.
No distraction, because what took place is what is, and I am not at odds with it. We will go where we're supposed to go. And I think what's just important is, like, it's important to establish a relationship with ourselves that allows for us to just be who we are, how we are. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's sometimes intentional resting. Like resting on purpose. And by resting, it's allowing whatever is to, like, be that way without, like, forcing it to be something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think that, when we think of, like, self-care, for example, a little quotation finger, self-care, and we think about, like, manicures and yoga and getting a massage and, like, all the things that, like, are supposed to be restful for some people, maybe, but I agree, like, just allowing yourself the space and also trusting your brain, like you said, to kind of go where it needs to go, to pay attention to what it needs to pay attention to like let yourself just be kind of in a natural state, especially in recovery. That's everybody's got, their own journey. And I think there's definitely times in my recovery that empty space would have been probably an unsafe place for me to be. But I think there are times now at this point in my life that it's like, I still am getting to know myself. I'm still figuring out what does come up as something that I would like to do. I don't know. It doesn't always even occur to me to ask myself, like, what do you want to do? What does feel like rest today? What would feel rejuvenating, And sometimes it's surprising what comes up, and it doesn't have to be the thing that's being sold to you.
Yeah, and when you're talking about, like, haircuts and massages and blah, 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 a lot of times when I'm ripping and running because I'm trying to keep up with all the things that are supposed to keep going, like, I'll look in the mirror and I'm like, dang, I ain't shaved my head in like a week, or I didn't clip my toenails, or, like, those things tend to fall to the wayside when I'm so focused on doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And those things are important too, like, those alarms, those sirens can be different for everybody. For me, one of those alarms is like, oh, like, I look in the mirror and my head isn't shaved, or I look in the mirror, or I go to, scratch my neck and I got Wolverine claws, or like, I'm, or my room is messy and I haven't taken the time to clean it up. There's dishes in the sink. Like, those type of things alert me, like, oh, I don't think you're doing what you need to be doing for yourself to take a pause and a beat and integrate. That's another thing too, like, integration of our experience is, Google it. Don't quote me. This is podcast wisdom, but sleep is when our brains do the most work. When we rest, like, our brains are literally integrating what it is that we learned throughout the day. So like sleep as a protecting the asset, which is us. Like nothing that we do can continue to be done if we are not there to do it. And by protecting the asset, which is ourselves, we invest in our most important asset. We give it sleep. We give it rest. We nurture it with good foods and the relationships that we admire and that we want in our lives, and get to know ourselves. Like sleep is one of them things where we could learn and get everything done throughout the day, but if we don't integrate that at the end of the night and get like an adequate amount of sleep, then none of that stuff sticks. And so I think that's a good parallel analogy for life in general. Like you ripping and running, but what is actually sticking? Like what is actually like becoming a part of the foundation if we're not taking the opportunity to sit back and integrate what it is that we're doing.
And letting that be like part of the joy of it. I don't know. I've had a lot of ups and downs with my relationship with sleep in particular. There's been times that I remember when I first got sober, I was like, how do people know when it's time to go to sleep if they're not just like passing out? Like, do you just like go to bed and lay there with your eyes open? Like, what is this? Like, literally did not know the process, I'm like, I'm going to need some instruction here. and then, and then I remember at one point kind of like figuring it out. It's amazing the kind of thing. It's like, how do people just feed themselves? Like they just know when they're supposed to eat? It's just all these things that I just had completely lost the reins on. And I started to just put myself to bed. Like I just didn't know when my body was telling me it was time to go to bed. So I started to just like pick an arbitrary time and like go to bed and, wear comfortable pajamas and brush my teeth for the first time before I went to bed in, however many years of drinking. And it was like this glorious, like unreal thing. Like if I know so many of our listeners are people in recovery, and the first time you wake up and see the sunrise and feel like it's a good thing, and the first time you get into bed and like feel the cool sheets and have your teeth brushed and like it's like, oh my God, these things that you just didn't even know, like people just get to do this all the time, and it was just so glorious. And then later in recovery, I've had a lot of sleep issues, it's hard for me to stay asleep, things like that. So it's amazing how, and so much of that mirrors, how I am feeling in my life, like whether I'm paying attention to my needs in my life. And the more I get back into that mindset of just like, I get to decide when I'm going to get into this bed and like, yeah, maybe I'm going to lay there with my eyes wide open, but guess what? Nobody can ask anything of me. I am in this bed. And like, that's a freaking gift. And like, I don't want to stop feeling like it is. Anyway.
Shout out to you.
Now I want to get into bed.
Shout out to those who brush their teeth before they go to bed. Y'all the real ones.
Even floss. I tell you. That's when I started doing that. I'm like, my life is together.
Yeah,
I have flossed
next
my
level when you
teeth.
flossing. Once a day. My dentist loved me. And before we close, like I think, even in the realm of like eating, like that's a big thing for me too. Where it's like, I wouldn't think about eating until like I was hungry, and by then it's like you too late. That's how they say about water. Like if you're thirsty, like you're dehydrated. So to sip water throughout the day versus wait until you're thirsty, because by that time, like that's your alarm going off. They're like, oh, you really haven't been taking care of yourself, and then to soften everything here up, because Liz and I are just like sharing our personal experiences, but this is it's a privilege to have the experience of figuring out what it is that we need in this season. And next season might not be like, this season, but this season is what it is now. I've had multiple seasons throughout my recovery where it's like it's certain things that I had to do when I needed it, or else I wasn't well. And, some of those things aren't prominent in my life today, but in my life today, there's some other things that's like, okay, I absolutely need that. And then there's things that have been a constant throughout it all, right? But this journey, this process of learning how to show up for what it is that we need so that we can contribute to the spaces that we frequent, that we serve, because service is a big part of this process. That's very important. And to keep people around you like Liz, who will check on me and tell me to take time off of work, or a Bryce who will tell Liz, like, put the sunglasses on, live on the bright side type deal, um, and to just surround yourself with reminders of your intention for a well-lived life, I think is the best care that you can take care of yourself. So with that being said, I think this is a good point to wrap it all around. And it's important for us to take this little hiatus from actively recording this show. You all have expressed so many ways in which it served you, and I hear so much from so many different people, like how this show has contributed to their lives, their recovery, people's favorite episodes. People quote things, and we record so far out that people are like, I heard this episode and you said this, and I'm like, I don't even remember saying that. And it's just dope to see like that ripple effect impact that this show in particular has had within the recovery community and beyond. And so we need to kind of just reestablish what's important to us and how we can continue to take this journey with you all and contribute in ways that are mutually important to me, Liz, and you all as well. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's given so much to us. Like it's such an honor to be sitting here with this microphone and sitting here with you, Bryce, and with folks who have reached out and talked about what the podcast means to them. We don't take that for granted or lightly, and it's just, I know it's been a huge part of my life and recovery to grow like in this space and out loud publicly. And I'm just really grateful because it has felt more and more every week, like as we've gotten to know each other and our guests and this audience, like we've felt, at least I have felt, safe and supported in showing up as myself more and more, and that's not something I've always been able to do, and certainly not in every space. So I am incredibly grateful because that's all inspired by everyone that's part of this community.
So we thank you all for listening. We love you. We'll see you soon. Continue to tap into the episodes as they drop. Share with your friends. That's another thing too. This podcast has helped you, and in that, imagine how many other people it can help. And so if you could think of innovative ways to get this show out, if there's blogs that you follow, or if there's podcast moderator or whatever, like shoot this off to them, to spread the word about this podcast and the different stories contained within it, because the further we spread it, the more people we can help, and we could never do this thing without you all. So we will see you when we see you, but hopefully you in the sun so we can see you with these shades.
Yeah, our future is so bright.
Yeah, but I wish I had to. We'll catch you next time on the next episode of the Rise Recover Live podcast.
Bye.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you, or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.